In the UK, autumn is now upon us. The leaves are changing colour, they're falling onto the ground, and winter isn't too far behind. So you may be ready for the new seasons, but is your car? In this video, I'll be going through maintenance advice, which in the long run could save you stress and, more importantly, money. So keep watching till the end. Let's kick off with a nice easy one, lights. As we get deeper into autumn and of course winter, the days become shorter, therefore we will become more reliant on our lights. So it's even more important to make sure they are working as they should. Now you can check the majority of the lights by yourself. Brake lights and the reverse light will be a bit more tricky, so ideally you'll want a second person, but there are ways around it. You could use a mirror or a window as a reflection, or another car as a reflection as well. So there are some ways around it. So let's turn the lights on and make sure that they are working on Leo, my Mark II Seat Leon Cupra. Now it is quite bright today, so you're not really going to be able to see the lights properly, but let's put the side lights on. You're also going to want to check the back to make sure your rear side lights are working as well. Offside rear, yep. Near side rear, yep. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So side lights, check. Now we want to make sure that the headlights are working. Yep, I can see the offside front is, and the near side front is working as well. Next up, you're going to want to make sure that your indicators are working, all of them. So easy way to do this. Turn on the hazards. So offside side is working. Offside front is also working. Near side front off camera is working. Near side side is working. And of course, let's work our way to the back of the vehicle. Yep, offside rear is working as it should. And near side rear is working as it should. Now, if your car is making a faster clicking noise when you're indicating, that's normally a good indicator that one of the bulbs is blown and your indicators, well, the remaining indicators are working faster, they're blinking faster, so that's worth bearing in mind. So, we've checked the indicators, headlights and the side lights. One thing I haven't checked is the main beam on the headlights, so let's do that. There we go, yeah, working as it should on the offside. And let's check the near side. Yeah, that looks pretty good. One thing to bear in mind with headlights, now with more modern vehicles, quite a lot of them will have auto leveling. In fact, although Leo is quite old, he also has auto leveling headlights. But if your car doesn't and it has an adjuster in the cabin, make sure it's set appropriately to the load in the vehicle. If you're carrying extra passengers or extra cargo, if you're doing an airport run, that's worth bearing in mind. Now, if you think your headlights are out of adjustment, you can always take them to a car repair garage and they will have that. Well, if they have an MOT test station, they will have a beam projector and they can test the beam of the headlights to make sure it is the correct height and that it is efficient. Over time, headlights do get cloudy, the lenses go cloudy, and therefore it can have an impact on the beam pattern. On modern day headlights, you can't replace lenses, so if your headlights are cloudy, you can polish them yourself. You can get kits from Halfords. They're relatively inexpensive and it helps to rejuvenate the lens of your existing headlight, which saves you money because it means you don't have to replace the headlight. So that is one of my top tips. So before I forget, let's move on to the brake lights. In fact, before I do that, if your car is fitted with front fog lights, like mine is, you're going to want to make sure they're working as well. So as you can see, offside front, tickety-boo. Near side front, tickety-boo. Make sure the rear fog light is working. Yep, that is working as it should. Lovely stuff. Let's see whether the reverse light is working. Yes, it is. And hopefully the brake lights would have operated as well. You'll also want to make sure that the top brake light works. So that one there, the centre brake light. Make sure that one's working as well. And there we go, those are your lights checked. Pretty nice and easy. One last thing on the lights, one thing I forgot to mention whilst I was filming this, but don't forget to check your number plate lights as well. Next up is another pretty simple one, windscreen wipers. I find these are items that get overlooked by quite a few owners, but these are really important and inexpensive. So if they're in poor condition, just replace them. I don't understand why people scrimp money on such a cheap item. These are really important because these are your tools for clearing your windscreen. If you can't clear your windscreen, you can't see where you're going. And if you're driving through a downpour, then you're more likely to have an accident. And This is easily avoided, just replace your wipers. So one thing to do, just check the condition of the wipers, make sure there's no obvious breaks or damages in them. Of course, you're going to want to check the other side as well. Just make sure there's no tears and that they're in good condition, they're not perished. They are made of rubber, so wiper blades will perish over time. Of course, next up, you've got to get into the car, turn on the ignition, and make sure they're clearing the screen effectively, which in the case of Leo, they are. Yep, they're working as they should, nice and smooth. Make sure the washer fluid is working as it should, and it's clearing the windscreen. Fantastic. So the wipers on Leo are working as they should. So as well as having good quality wipers, it's really important to have good quality screen wash as well. The wipers are only half the story. You need washer fluid to go with it. Now, one really important thing to bear in mind when it comes to windscreen washer fluid, and I work in the motor trade, and again, this gets overlooked by a lot of owners, is that not all windscreen washer fluids are ready to pour in. Quite a lot of them are concentrate and need to be diluted to the correct specification before it goes into the vehicle. You will have a different dilution in the summer months than you would do in winter, so be sure to read the instructions thoroughly. Otherwise, if you pour it straight in, over time it will congeal, it will block everything up, and you're going to run into further problems. So make sure you read the instructions. Now, interestingly, in the UK at least, the rear windscreen wiper is not a required item for the MOT. Although I would argue if a car is fitted from factory with a rear windscreen wiper, then I think it should be an MOT tested item, but that's merely my opinion. So same thing, you're going to want to make sure that the rear wiper is working as it should do. I will cut to a clip so you can see it. Yeah, wipers operating as it should. What about the fluid? A little bit slow, but the fluid has come out and it isn't smearing, which is good because I've replaced the rear wiper blade not too long ago. So there we go. Those are your wipers checked. Again, a pretty easy item. Now, let's delve under the bonnet and check our fluids. This is where things get a bit more technical and in-depth because there is a very strong chance that my engine bay, the layout, will differ to your car at home, but this will act as a general guidance into what to check and how to check it. So you have engine oil, engine coolant, washer fluid, windscreen washer fluid, brake fluid, and depending on the age of your car, you may also have power steering fluid as well. One really important thing, well, two really important things to add when checking your fluids. Ideally, you'll want the vehicle to be cold, the engine to be cold, and you'll want the car to be on a flat surface, because if it's on an incline or a decline, you're not going to get a true reading of how high or low the fluids are. Now, I will confess, Leo, my Land Cooper, is on a slight decline, but it's not a massive one, so it's not really going to throw the readings out that much. But let's start off with the engine oil. So in the case of a Land Cooper, it's just here. So pull it out, give it a wipe, and slot it back in. When you pull it back out, you're going to try and want to keep it as flat as possible, because if you tip it up, the oil's going to drip down and it's not going to give you an accurate reading. So take out so. The oil level is just below the max. Another top tip, if you are topping up your oil, just check the oil cap itself. Just get it into focus. Just check the oil cap, make sure there's no creamy or milky residue. If there is, then that could be a symptom that your head gasket is failing. You may have had a bit of condensation on there, particularly if you're doing shorter journeys. So if it is a little bit of moisture on there, don't panic, but just keep an eye on it. And next up, we will check the engine coolant, which is just here in this round reservoir just here. Now, on some cars, over time, the coolant bottles will become dirty and murky, and getting an accurate reading can be difficult. One thing you may want to do, if you do have that problem, is just get a torch and shine it inside, so that should give you a better idea of where the fluid is. Or another thing you can do is just to give the car a gentle shake. So you can see the fluid moving. So the coolant is bang on, so no concerns there. So this car uses pink coolant. That's another thing to bear in mind. Not all cars use the same coolant, so if you do need to top it up, make sure you're getting the right one for your car. And if you do need to top it up, just make sure the car's cold, because this is under pressure. Therefore, if you open this when the car's hot, you're going to burn yourself and coolant will go everywhere. Brake fluid, again, brake fluid can be a little bit difficult to check, so I'm going to give the car a bit of a shake, and I'll get a torch in there. But from what I can see, brake fluid looks to be okay, but I think I'm going to struggle to get that one on camera just because it's right at the back of the engine bay. Yeah, I think that's just below the maximum. So again, that's absolutely fine. As I mentioned, this car hasn't got a power steering reservoir, so I don't need to worry about power steering fluid. Although behind me, behind the camera, I do have my Mark 1 MX-5, and that does have a power steering fluid reservoir, so we can check on that in a few moments. So just briefly onto the power steering fluid. As I mentioned, Monique, my Mark 1 Mazda MX-5, she does use this fluid. Unlike the other fluids, this is one to check when the vehicle's hot. Monique is stone cold at the moment and she's on a slight decline, so this isn't really the best way of doing it, but it gives you some idea. Just take out the dipstick like so, and once I get it on the focus, you will see on the dipstick it has a bit for H. There we go. So it has a bit on there that says H because that's where the level should be when the vehicle is hot and up to temperature. So it gives you some idea, but the majority of vehicles nowadays don't use power steering fluid anyway, so it's a good chance this won't be applicable to your car. As you can see on my MX-5, checking the brake fluid level is far easier because it's easier to see what you're looking for, and as you've spotted, or should have spotted by now, it's right on the maximum, so happy days. Now, checking the washer fluid again will be a little bit difficult in certain vehicles, but I know the fluid is okay because that was recently topped up because I had to carry out a repair on this area, and so everything is tickety-boo. So that's the fluids checked. Moving on to something really, really important, tyres. For me, tyres are such an important aspect of a car, and they can transform it for better or for worse. As I mentioned earlier, I work in the motor trade, and although it is a minority of people, I find that some people's attitudes towards tyres are somewhat alarming. You have to remember, these are the only things connecting your car to the road, so why, oh why, would you want to scrimp money on such an important item? Now, I understand for some people money is tight, but if you really want to put your money in the right area on your car, then it has to be the rubber. Some people will opt for part warned. In my opinion, just don't do it.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
It's not worth the risk. Yes, you are saving a bit of money, but for a short-term gain compared to the long-term potential consequences, it isn't worth it. Don't get me wrong, you may be watching this and you've been using part worn tyres for years and you've had no problems. That's great, but I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend budget tyres either, because yes, they may feel pretty good to begin with, but as they age and wear, you're likely to find the quality will quickly diminish. So in my opinion, I would recommend mid-range upwards. Having said that, I am a bit of a tyre snob, so I always fit premium tyres to my vehicles. Even when I had my cheap Audi A6 that didn't really deserve premium tyres, I made sure I put Goodyear Eagle F1s on it because, yeah, that's just the kind of person I am. Speaking of Goodyear, on my Leon Cupra, he is wearing Goodyear Eagle F1 Supersport tyres, and Monique, my Mazda MX-5, just in front of me behind the camera, she is wearing Michelin Pilot Sport 3 tyres. So yes, I always make sure that I've got high quality rubber on my vehicles, because there could well be the difference between aquaplaning or skidding or having a collision and not having a collision. Sounds quite dramatic, but my point is tyres are really important. Anyway, enough preaching. How do you check your tyres? Well, to begin with, you're going to want to make sure the tyres are, the wheels are turned out so it's easier to check them. So let's do that. Now, on the internet or on social media, you may have seen the life hack in which you can use one of these to measure your tread depth. A 20 pence piece. The idea being, is that if the tread depth is below the line on the 20 pence piece, then it is likely to be under the legal limit. Now, this isn't a bad way of checking your tread depths, but I would argue it isn't the best. What you really want to do is to get one of these, a tread depth gauge. These are inexpensive. This was under £10, and if you go to Halfords, you can actually get a 2-in-1. I had one, which particularly I can't find. It was a tread depth gauge and a tyre pressure gauge all in one, and it even comes on a handy keyring. So I would recommend that. I'll pop the link in the video description, but this will be more accurate than a 20p. May cost more than a 20p, but it is better. Now, when you're measuring the tread depth, you want to work across the whole of the tyre, because you want to make sure that the tyre isn't wearing unevenly. If it's wearing more on the outside edge or the inside edge, that's normally a good indicator that your alignment needs to be checked. So take it to a garage and get the tracking done. Now, if you're finding it's wearing more on the outside edge and the inside edge, that's normally a good indicator that the wheel has been driven with the tyre underinflated. Because what happens is that when it's underinflated, the shoulders of the tyre splay out onto the road and they wear faster. Conversely, if the middle of the tread is wearing faster than the edges, that's normally a good indicator that the tyre has been over-inflated. So just bear that in mind. Make sure your tyre pressures are as they should be. So, without further ado, let's check the tread depths. So where are we? That's about 7mm. Yeah, that's also 7mm. That's a little bit above 7mm, and that's on 7mm. So across the board, you're looking at 7mm, which is absolutely fine. The legal limit, by the way, is 1.6mm, although it is recommended to have the tyre replaced at 3mm because the wet weather braking won't be as good and it will be somewhat compromised. Your average brand new tyre normally comes with about 8 or 7mm of tread on it, which would make sense because these front tyres are fairly new. I've done a few miles on them, but yes, these Goodyear Eagle F1 Super Sport tyres, they're pretty fresh. One other thing you'll want to check when you're checking the tyres is to make sure that you haven't got any cords exposed. Although you'd think tyres are made of rubber, and they are, the frame of the tyre, the structure of the tyre is actually made from metal. If there's uneven wear or there's damage to the tyre, sometimes that metal structure can be seen through the surface, and that is an MOT failure, and that's also a dangerous defect. If a policeman were to catch you with such a defect, then it can lead to a fine up to £2,500 and 3 points on your licence. So if you have cords exposed on your tyre, get them replaced. You'll also want to check for any bulges, because if you have a bulge in your tyre, there's that is clear damage to the tyre and it makes the tyre weaker, and it's more likely to have a blowout. Okay, of course you're going to want to do the same on all 4 wheels. Doing the rear wheels is going to be a little bit more tricky because of course you can't turn them, so just bear that in mind. Ideally, to get a proper visual of the tyres, you'll want to get it up in the air, either on a ramp or on axle stands, but just for the sake of a basic maintenance check, yes, just check the tread depths, make sure they're all okay. Whilst you're here, there's no harm in checking the tyre pressures. Checking the tyre pressures is really important because it will make sure the tyre wears as evenly as possible, and it can also have quite a dramatic effect on your fuel economy as well, because if your tyres are underinflated, that creates more drag, more rolling resistance, and you're using more petrol to get the car along. So it's really important to check the tyre pressures. The pressures are normally indicated on a sticker, either on the fuel filler flap or in the door trims, or you can find it in your manual, or just Google it. Seems like a bit of a cop-out thing to say, just say Google it, but you get what I mean. So, because I can't find my normal tyre pressure gauge, I've got my Ryobi compressor. Other pumps are available, so just pop that on like so. And that's reading 30 psi. The front tyres on this car should be pumped up to 32 psi. So that tyre is now as it should be, and I'll go around to check the other tyres as well. Won't film it because you get the idea. Now, whilst you're in this area, if you have the knowledge, the experience, or the know-how, there's no harm in checking your brakes as well to make sure they're not getting too low. So I can see on Leo, The front brakes have got loads of meat left on them. Granted, I can't check the inner pads, but just have a look at the outer pads and the disc condition. There's a bit of corrosion on there, but that's just where he's been sat for quite a few days in the rain, so I'm not too concerned about that. That would scrub off once the car's been driven. So I'm pretty happy in this area. Let's finish the video with some items I believe you should keep in your boot for these colder, darker, wetter months, and in all honesty, they're pretty good to have in general. Now, of course, for the colder months, for the icier months, you'll want a scraper. Granted, this is a very basic one, but it gives you some idea. Do you have a better scraper somewhere? Alternatively, if you prefer, you can also use de-icer. That's normally my go-to. I find de-icer is a little bit easier. No harm in having a first aid kit. This was pretty inexpensive. Granted, it's a somewhat basic first aid kit, but it could prove to be useful. I've also got jump leads in here as well, which thankfully I rarely need, but it's good to have them just in case. What else have I got in here? A spare oil for any top-ups. An umbrella in the UK is always a valuable asset. In fact, I've got 2 umbrellas in the boot of Leo. And there's no harm in keeping other items in here, such as a blanket just in case you break down and it's cold, and a torch if you break down when it is dark. Other things worth having would be a warning triangle and just spare bulbs just in case you need them on your trip, and maybe even just a basic toolkit just so you can make some minor basic repairs on the roadside. I'm not talking about changing the brake pads and discs, for example, but just a basic repair just to help you get home. So again, it's worth having that in your arsenal. So I do hope you have found this video useful. If so, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you have any questions or you want to know something that I perhaps haven't covered, or you want more advice on the products I use, then yes, drop them in the comment section below. But if you have found this video useful, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you are subscribed, don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified every time I make a video. But until the next time, guys, be sure to keep up the car obsession.